But nobody ever said, no, you go too far, sir. They were just like, it's good. Does it have the toys in it? Great, go. It's in production. That's all they cared about.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of when they haven't really ever really rained. So it's
they haven't rained fire down on you for your.
No, and I've been pretty fortunate in not having to.
Well, do you have like a licensing dude or dudette who make sure everything's kosher with the grand Hasbro Bondi plan for world domination?
Because this guy called Michael Kelly has been is that guy. He's been there since the beginning of the IDW company having the license, and he's sort of the unsung hero, I think, in that he's very supportive, and he's a bit like you. You're encouraged to do.
He's really good looking and eloquent.
And a raconteur.
I like him already.
Yeah, he holds the crowd.
Excellent.
But yeah, no, David Kelly is sort of the gatekeeper, and we're writing a script. It's got to pass the editorial first, and then it's got to go to Hasbro. And I believe it is Michael that sort of reads it and has notes or whatever. But I mean, IDW is fortunate. It's the G1 continuity that IDW has been publishing now for nearly 14 years. It sort of exists in its own space. It's not the Michael Bay movies. It's not an animated series. Right. It's got more freedom to do different things. Yeah. And Michael is the guy that said from the beginning, actually, when John Barber and I sort of took over about 7-8 years ago, so-called Phase 2, and the instruction from Hasbro was to really make them was to humanize them and to make them more relatable as characters, and to sort of, in so many words, to inject some emotion.
The endless hours of conversation I had with Jay Bacall of Sunbow, which was Hasbro, saying character stories, you got to do character stories. And he was like, but we just want the I'm like, are you out of your mind? It's like the kids, you've got to make the kids fall. You want the kid to buy the toy, make the kid care about the character.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's part of your legacy, actually, is that your episodes were sort of foregrounded in either emotion or world building, or at their best, both those things.
Well, another thing, and I'm curious as to whether or not, I'm sure you do this in the comics, but I'd like to hear it from your own face. That came out, that sounded better in my head. Was that, and we were talking about this, if anybody was here yesterday, like you, she almost made me cry yesterday. She said such a sweet thing. But my feeling was, these guys have all just crashed here on this planet that is not their home. They are guests here. I'm really sort of doing Prime's thinking here. And we have to protect these people. We brought this war to them. They didn't, it's not their fault, And we have to basically fight their battles and not just our battles, which is why a lot of my episodes have a human, kind of co-guest star, even though that never became a toy. That didn't help them with the toys. But, Raoul and Make Tracks and a story in Girl Who Loved Power Glide, and there was one called Trans-Europe Express, which had featured a lot, it was a human race, basically. Car race, not the human race. Because I felt, well, first of all, it was just interesting to see that interaction, and it also sort of humanizes the robots, but it also, or the Autobots, but it also sort of points out the differences as well. And I'm curious as to if you go there a lot in the comics.
Well, the comics have sort of gone off on their own tangent now, and for the last 7-8 years, the defining characteristic of the stories is that the war's finished. So it's an uneasy piece, and there's obviously still tensions and friction and fighting and stuff.
Wow.
But fundamentally, yeah. So, and it's all coming to an end in October. So the whole continuity is wrapping up.
You're writing yourself out of a job?
Yeah. Turtles next.
There you go.
And then, and when we ended the war, I think everybody was justified in thinking that in a year's time or 2 years' time it would resume. But it looks like we're going to get to the end without having to do that. And also they're mostly set. Well, there's two main titles, and one is more or less on Earth. One isn't. One's in space or whatever. And
Well, those are kind of your two choices.
yeah, this is
really.
it. This is right. Yeah. And there's one entirely in inner space. It's just like Inside Out. It's entirely metaphysical. It's boring to look at.
I was going to say that's the one I want to write for.
Yeah.
Wow.
But yeah, it's easier on the Earth-based one to sort of.
Well, yeah, because you got
examine.
humans
Yeah,
there.
Yeah. But the idea is that a good Transformers story is one that you couldn't just swap the robots for humans or for organics.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And often the way you pass that test is by as you know, highlighting the differences in approach or culture.
Right.
So that's good on the Earth-based ones, and so I do the space-based ones, and then really your angle of attack is in the characterization and is in the interaction between.
Yeah. Well, that's like the Rebirth was basically was space-based because it was